Hey listeners, it's Kara, your host. After 176 amazing episodes and hundreds of book recommendations, I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you to find your next great read. The Bookish Lights Roadmap is your guide to all 175 podcast episodes, sorted by genre so you can quickly find the stories that fit your reading mood. From picture books to adult novels and everything in between, it's the perfect way to explore past episodes and discover new favorites. You can find your copy of the Bookish Lights Roadmap at www.bookishlights.com/read/roadmap, or just click the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights, a podcast where we tell our stories through our favorite books. Each episode features a bookish guest where we will talk about reading, life, and the seasons we're in, all through a thoughtfully paired book flight of recommendations for you. If you're looking for meaningful book recommendations and a space to slow down, you're in the right place. In today's episode, I am chatting with Virginia Pye. She is the author of Marriage and Other Monuments, which Kirkus Reviews calls a fascinating and audacious novel of family, marriage, and a society in flux. And it was a #1 Amazon bestseller in New Southern Fiction. Virginia is the author of 4 previous award-winning books, including her post-colonial historical novels, River of Dust and Dreams of the Red Phoenix, and the short story collection Shelf Life of Happiness. We're here today to discuss Marriage and Other Monuments. Welcome to the show, Virginia.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes. Well, I always feel like we are so much more robust than these bios. So can you start by telling us a little bit about who you are?
Sure. Thank you. Well, let's see. I'm the author of 5 books. Marriage and Other Monuments is my 5th. And my 2 first books, Dreams of the River of Dust and Dreams of the Red Phoenix, are both literary historical novels set in China about Americans there in the early 20th century.
Okay.
And my collection of short stories, Shelf Life of Happiness, are contemporary and are told from the perspective of a lot of very different characters, a 14-year-old skateboard and an 80-year-old artist. And my most recent book before Marriage and Other Monuments was The Literary Undoing of Victoria Swan, which is a Gilded Age novel set in Boston about a woman dime novelist who sues her Boston publisher for underpaying her as a woman. So it's a feminist story, it's a book lover's story, it's absolutely a tribute to Boston's sort of literary history, which is so strong.
Yes.
So, and then Marriage and Other Monuments, which we're going to get to talk about.
Yeah. And listeners, if you're like, okay, I've heard that novel before, we actually chatted about it on episode 203. It was included in the book flight with Catherine Scott Crawford. So if you're like, that name's ringing a bell, the Literary Undoing of Victoria Swan was on that book flight on 203. So if you want to go hear a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, and I'm really grateful to Catherine for mentioning it and for connecting me to you and to your audience. And I love her book as well. And I think we have going to have a great conversation.
Absolutely. Well, for listeners that maybe haven't had a chance to pick up Marriage and Other Monuments yet, let's tell them a little bit about it.
Sure. Okay, so this is a novel that is set in the summer of 2020 in Richmond, Virginia. And it's the story of 2 estranged sisters, both of whose marriages implode against that backdrop of the social justice protests and the removal of the Confederate monuments. So it's very much a family story, a marriage story, a sister story, and yet it's also a story about what happens to our personal lives, our private lives, when the society around us is in great change and flux. And there's sort of chaos all around. How does that end up affecting our personal relationships and our sense of what we want for ourselves individually?
Yeah. And that's why I love reading, because I think most of us, if you read this novel, you heard about this in the news at the time, But until
Mhm.
you read it through story and people that were, going through that within that in real time, it doesn't
Yeah.
really, outside of just being a news story, it's just a news story, right? So I love novels for that, is it can put us in, we can walk in someone else's shoes that was going through that. And it's a bit of history.
It is a bit of history. It's a funny thing. I'm describing this as historical fiction of the very recent past.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really exist, I understand. But, so much has happened since 2020. The history has sort of speeded up on us. And this was a moment that was profound in our nation's history. And so putting characters into a situation like that isn't that different than putting them into some historical moment in the more
Yeah.
distant past. And so it's sort of, how does history, how do these big moments of sort of sweeping change affect us personally?
Yeah. And out of all those themes in your novel, what did you find the easiest to write about and what did you find the most difficult to write about?
The themes, you mean, or the characters? Let's see. So, huh, I, I end up getting really interested in storytelling.
Okay.
My novels all have a lot that happens. I love character. I love developing character, going in on great detail on character, but they have to do things. They have to have challenges. And so that's what I focus on. In this case, there was so much going on, as you described, like in the news,
Yeah.
that that's sort of, as I say, the backdrop. So that's sort of filtered into the story. None of my characters are on the front lines. None of them are the organizers of the protests. None of them are the mayor of the city of Richmond. None of them are the head of the police department. These are just regular people who find themselves caught up in sort of action that's taking place around them.
Yeah.
And so I like weaving that kind of storytelling where, things that can really affect people's lives sort of comes upon them or they come upon it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, how do they react? How do they change? How do they make different decisions than you might expect, especially in relation to each other? And, what could be more personal than marriage and the decisions we make within marriages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was there any character that you were writing that surprised you as you were writing this novel?
Um, Eek, it's funny. The novel's told in four voices, and it's over like a 6-week period of the summer. And I sort of love the separate arcs that the four take. These are the two husbands and two wives.
Yeah.
And the two wives, as a reminder, are sisters of each other. So you have that relationship too. And so you sort of have this in each instance, how are they each changing individually? And how is that each changing their marriages or their relationships with each other? And the one that I really enjoyed writing the most in a way was Bobby. Bobby
Okay.
Powers is the son of Preston Powers. And Preston Powers and the Powers Company is a big name, Richmond, longtime real estate family. And Preston is sort of a magnate, real estate magnate. And he wants his son, who's in his late 40s, to take over the business and be a man in the image that Preston has always held out for him. And Bobby is a bit of a lost soul, and he um nothing about the business really speaks to him, and he really, in this moment of change around him, he has to find his way. And the
Yeah.
thing that I like about Bobby is that nature helps him find it. It's the James River that runs through the heart of the city of Richmond, and his connection to that river that sort of helps him finally, at middle age, find his way in life. And so, that there were things about the river that ended up surprising me, and there are things about Bobby's story that ended up surprising me. But
Yeah.
there's something about that that just made me so happy to get to tell a story like that.
Yeah.
Somebody who you sort of least expect needs to be free from their circumstances, and yet he really does need to be free from his circumstances
Absolutely.
that he's born into. Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it takes a catalyst to make us do that, right? Like we're not usually
Yeah.
willing to change until there's something like, okay, all right, something's got to give here. A big moment
Yeah.
to make us do that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I kept thinking about there was this so-called movement during that time in the during COVID where people were leaving their jobs, and we called it the Great Resignation.
yeah.
And it was people who were like not just leaving jobs, but they were leaving careers. It was often people who were well enough off to leave their jobs, so they were leaving well-established paths in life to go, I'm going to become a baker. I'm going to become a
Yeah.
weaver. I'm going to go, farm goats. Who knows what people were suddenly deciding to do. And there was a freeing up of a lot of people. I don't know where it's left us now, 6 years later. And are they still on the farm? I don't know about those folks. Maybe there's a follow-up novel to be
Yeah.
written.
Well, I also think
Yeah.
it gave us time because
Yes.
everything was canceled in your life all of a sudden. And so you had a lot of
Yeah.
time to explore. I can't tell you how many authors I think at this point are like, well, this was my COVID novel. Like, this is what I started when I had
I
time.
know. I know.
Yeah.
It was interesting though, when I was shopping around this novel and I'd given it to my agent and we were doing that, um, we got a lot of feedback that we were told that people didn't want to be reminded of the summer of 2020, that
Mm,
people wouldn't want to read about Black Lives Matter or the protests or COVID or be reminded of any of that. I have found that to be the exact opposite. That when I tell people just the premise of the book, they immediately want more information about that time and a chance to reflect on it. And I think because it was really profound in all of our lives to, as you say, like have free time, have a time to reassess, and have a time to think about, sort of what does our country stand for? Do we agree with these protesters that seem so extreme? Do we disagree? Where are we
yeah.
in relation to all that was going on around us? And so, anyway, I've found that actually there's been quite a nice audience for a story set in that time.
Yeah.
Although, I didn't focus much on COVID in this book. I didn't, not to give a spoiler, but nobody gets sick from COVID, for example.
Yeah.
It's not really a COVID book as much as it is about these people in a society that's changing, which,
Yeah.
had to do more with the protests. Yeah.
And I feel like your novel, there not that it was light, right? It was tackling tough topics, but I think that there was hope within it as well. And so it's told from
Yeah.
the lens where you can go back and you can read this, but it's not going to sink us into like the despair that some might have felt in those
Yes.
times.
Yes. I mean, it starts with two couples, the sisters' two marriages are both on the rocks or having a hard time right from the
Yeah.
start, but it doesn't stay in that place. They
Yeah.
each have to change and evolve. And I hope I use humor and sort of lightheartedness and sort of a miscommunications and, things that I hope readers can relate to, that, as you say, are not too heavy, but also kind of point to, I don't know, how different our lives can be when we open them up a bit.
Yeah. Perfect. And that was actually
Yeah.
going to be my next question, but I feel like you've answered it quite a bit. Was going to be,
Yeah.
what is your hope for readers? What do you hope they'll take away from this story?
Well, I always really want people to be entertained.
Yeah.
Um, I want them to enjoy the language, not be distracted by it. I find that sometimes poorly written books, I find that distracting. And I want them to have the prose sort of wash over them and for them to feel a kind of delight in the language and then really get into the characters. And I want them to feel like they know these people, that they can relate to them, that their situations aren't so crazy or unpredictable or that they're believable,
Yeah.
right? And then start to think like, well, how would I respond? How would I deal
Yeah.
in a marriage like that that's having those problems? Um, do I trust this husband? Do I appreciate this wife? Et cetera. And maybe reflect on their own lives. And then I want them to be surprised by things. I like having twists and turns and things that keep readers on their toes.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
think you did an excellent job. And having read it myself, I'm
Thank
like, you
you.
did all of those things, and I really enjoyed it. What
Thank
did
you
you
so
learn
much.
about yourself through writing this novel?
Um, well, that's a great question. It's my umpteenth novel.
Hmm.
As I said, I've got 5 books published, but I also have a number of novels that never were picked up by publishers. So I have them in drawers. And I learned that I feel more confident writing a novel now with practice, that I think you get better with each one.
Yeah.
And this was a complete joy to write. I think that also when I set out to write a story that is ostensibly a hard topic, this is a tough time, etc., I can't help but infuse joy into it and hope. And
Yeah.
that's kind of just who I am. And so here we go again with another. And that's how Victoria Swan is too. Victoria Swan has a lot of humor and has a certain um, sort of love of life thrown into it, I think, even when the characters face difficult circumstances. Um, so those are all things that I sort of don't know if I always want that to be my voice, but it is who I am.
Yeah,
And
we can't
so
change that
here we are
sometimes.
again, here we are again. And so yeah,
Yeah.
I think I should just embrace it and hope that the reader enjoys that. Yeah, so I like using complex, challenging, challenges that the characters face, but I do like to keep it light in certain ways too.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, I mean, I guess I can't speak for most readers, but I like to read that where I'm reading something, but I'm not going to be left feeling like the despair again, like just on the couch, like, oh gosh, when it's done. So when
Yeah.
there's infused with that, but you're still tackling the tough topics, I appreciate that type of writing. So,
Great. Thanks.
do you
Great.
have any upcoming projects or any new projects you're working on?
Well, speaking of those novels that are in drawers,
Yeah.
I seem to be drawn to going back to a novel that I first wrote in the 1990s. I don't even want to give you a hint of how old I am, um, but this was a novel that was set in the 1980s. So when I wrote it, it was just about a very recent time.
Yeah.
Now it's historical fiction, which is just so alarming.
Yeah, exactly. We don't want to
Um,
hear that.
no, no, but it is. And I'm doing research on the 80s. It's set in New York City. And it does, once again, have a difficult kind of setting and topic in the sense that it is touched by two main things going on in the society at that time. And one was, of course, the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
And the other was this very strange moment in the 80s and 90s where Americans got caught up in um, these stories of supposed sexual cults and accusations of memories and false memories and child abuse. And this was all in the news.
Okay.
Daycares were being accused of it, families were being accused of it. There was a great sense of questioning going on, and particularly people in their 20s or at the age of my characters are suddenly wondering if things had happened to them in their childhoods that they don't remember, but maybe they happened. And so it was a very strange time where there was all this sort of sexual tension and accusations in the air that had to do with these two main things going on in society.
Yeah.
Okay, so once again, that sounds very heavy, right?
Yeah.
I know me, and I'm going to figure out a way to tell the story of this female character, sort of weaving her way through all of this. And she's newly married, and a boyfriend, her previous boyfriend, contacts her because he has been diagnosed with AIDS. And
Okay.
so there's a question about whether she is safe or not. And anyway, here we go again with I've set novels in wartime China about Americans there. And in my first novel, a young missionary couple has their toddler child kidnapped by Mongolian bandits. There's always some major threat to my
Yeah.
characters. And then the trick is how to tell a story that doesn't leave my reader with a headache, but with some sense of life
Yeah.
and survival and joy. So here we go again. It's going to be
Oh,
fun.
yeah. Oh, well,
Fun
I'd
for
love
me
to hear
anyway.
more about it when it's ready to go.
It's got a
So,
title. It's called Making Love.
okay.
So,
Oh, that's a good one. I like it. Yeah.
yep, there you go.
I love it. Well,
Anyway,
let's switch gears a little bit and let's talk about who
sure.
you are as a reader. So, what genres do you enjoy?
I read mostly exclusively fiction. And I read a lot of novels. I usually have one or two books open, and I'm listening to one as well when I'm driving or walking the dog. I feel like I'm absorbing fiction all the time. And I have classic, English literature class fiction that I enjoy. And I read the latest Oprah book, and I read Reese Witherspoon. You know what I mean? I try to read a range of
Yeah.
what we might call commercial fiction and highly literary fiction, and everything in between.
Yeah. How in your busyness do you find time to read?
Well, I make it a priority. I think one of the questions you might be about to ask me is, where do I read?
Yeah.
And the truth is, I sit down every morning on our sofa at one end of it, and my miniature poodle sits on my lap or curls up on my lap and goes back to sleep. Lucky her. And I read. And so I read for at least an hour and a half every day.
Yeah.
And I read at night before bed. If I have a quiet moment in the day, I can read sometimes if my husband's not home. I read at lunchtime. And, right now I have the luxury, I'm a bit older, and I have the luxury of being a full-time writer and reader.
Yeah.
And so I garden and I do a lot of things with friends and I go to everybody's book event. But I'm, this is my business, so to speak, is to
True.
read and write. So
Yeah.
that's what I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love
Mhm.
that. Business and priority, right? But it's something you want to be
Business
doing. So,
priority, and luckily it's a complete joy. Like, I
yeah.
couldn't be luckier than,
Yeah.
oh yeah, what a shame, I have to read another amazing novel.
Yeah. I
It's
had
pretty
this
great.
moment of, I'm actually a physical therapist by trade, but I happen to be a military spouse,
Fantastic.
which is how I've become a podcaster because I just got really tired of changing my job and my license every time we move. And I was like, I need something that moves with
Ah,
us. Like this is,
yeah.
I'm too busy with my family life to like do this. And anyway, so long story short,
That's so cool.
it dawned on
Yeah.
me like 2 years into this. I'm like, I have made books my job, which was always my child. I have been a lifelong reader, which was how I ended up here. But I'm like,
Fantastic.
look at what I
Fantastic.
did. I
Well,
did it.
that is so amazing and
Yeah.
so wonderful and so great for your listeners. Do you write yourself? Can you
I don't,
say
I've
share
dabbled
about
a
that?
little bit. I took some classes
Okay.
actually just in over the winter season because life was a bit slower. I took some writing classes. And
Nice.
to be completely honest, I have well, now I just said I'm like doing the age thing here. My kids are about to have all their birthdays, a 6, 7, and a 10-year-old. And my life
Wow.
is
Okay.
incredibly busy just
Yeah.
being their mom. And that was part of why I left the
Yeah.
clinic too, was so I could have more time with them, right? Like I'm
Yes.
exchanging my time
Yes.
in some way, but this way I'm exchanging my
Absolutely.
time in the early morning hours or when they're doing school or, all the things. And
Yep.
so I can be present and be with them. So I
That's
realized
great.
after
That's
kind of
great.
diving into these writing classes over the winter that I don't need to add something else to my plate that's going to take me away. Because the whole point of me stepping away from that job was to be with my kids. So, like,
Sure.
table this
Understandable.
for right now and just kind of
That's
dabble in
good.
it.
That's
So
good.
it'll probably be just a dabble for a while in this
Well,
season.
and also all the books that you read and have these conversations about are feeding whatever writerly mind you're developing if you end up going down
Yes.
that route. I actually stopped writing for close to 10 years
Wow.
after my first child was
Okay.
born. I had a very difficult labor and afterbirth. And I just wasn't drawn to going back to a
Yeah.
book. In fact, the book I was working on was that book set in the 80s that I just
Okay.
described,
Yeah.
and I set it aside. And then I just I didn't have it in me to write book length fiction, which it takes a huge amount
Yeah.
of brain space and time. It's like a marathon
I
to
can
write a
only
novel.
imagine. Yeah.
And you need the time and you need the headspace. I didn't start writing book length fiction until my second child went to kindergarten.
Yeah.
And so there was like a period of like 8 years there, where I just, as you're sort of making it a priority to be with your kids when they're young, that's what I chose as well. And
Yeah.
I was teaching writing, and there's too many things on my plate. Couldn't do it.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And
yeah.
I think that for me, a lot of times, I've realized that we need to model behavior we want for our
Yeah,
children versus just saying, like, go read
right.
your book. And so for me, when I am behind a book, I think that's a better model for my children than like they see me on the computer and they don't quite know what I'm doing there.
Right.
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 And
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
I'm
That
not
can
saying it's good or bad. That's not that, but just where I am at this stage of life, it's like, let's just love reading in this household and I'm going to be happy with, with that.
that's
And my
fantastic. That's
oldest son has been
fantastic.
a guest on the show. And so that was really fun. And my daughter is now, she's
Oh,
working on her book flight. We've been working on her book flight for a couple months, but so she's
wow.
about to come on. And so just,
That's so great. The fact that they are being raised as readers is just so wonderful. That's
yeah.
just awesome. Awesome.
Absolutely. Well, I ask all of
Yeah.
our guests to bring three books
Yes.
in the form of a book flight. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
Well, I didn't think too hard about it in the sense that, as I said, I've been reading a lot, all
Yeah.
the time. And I chose three books that I have just finished or am even in the midst of reading right now.
Oh,
I just
okay.
thought, let's be, hot off the presses with these.
I love it.
The first one is Dream State by Eric Puchner. And it is a novel that actually came out in 2025, and it was an Oprah Book Club pick. I missed it at the time, but I've just read it now in paperback. And what I loved about this, and why I think of it as sort of a role model of what I like to do
Yeah.
myself, is that it's a story that's got great characters that are told with great depth and level of detail, just little nuances, this author knows everything about these characters,
Yeah.
especially the main ones. And then it's also set in against a sort of a big societal issue, which is
Okay.
climate change.
Okay.
And he shows global warming in the most vivid terms, where he doesn't hit us over the head with sort of the concept of it. He literally shows it by, oh, the ice caps are melting. Oh, here's this water flooding in. In other words,
Okay.
it's active.
You're
It's
experiencing it.
the so-called theme of climate change is an absolute characteristic of the book. Like, it's happening in the
Okay.
book.
Yeah.
And so I love that. That's sort of a role model for me of how
Yeah.
I like to do things.
So that was Dream State by Eric Puchner. Yep. And then what's the next one you brought?
The next one is a family story by Allegra Goodman. This is linked short stories that sort of end up being like a novel, essentially. It's called This Is Not About Us. This is her most recent book. She's put out several, one right after the next, and
Yeah.
they've won all sorts of awards, and she's just a terrific writer. This one I loved because it's about an extended Jewish family,
Okay.
three generations. At the beginning, there's a chart that shows us who's who and
Okay.
how they
Helpful.
relate to each other. And they, yep, and how they have these long-standing, intractable, maddening fights amongst family members, that they are so stubborn and won't change or look at or improve. And you just feel for these characters, and it's filled with so much humor and love for these characters who are having these petty conflicts.
Yeah.
And you just kind of want to hug them and tell them get it together. But I also kind of wanted to join the family. Like, it just was so appealing because of her light touch. It's just beautifully told.
Okay. I haven't read that one yet. I'm like, ooh, I haven't even heard of it.
It's
So thank you
great.
for sharing it. Yeah.
Actually, that novel, sorry, that
No,
collection
you're
of
good.
linked stories was chosen by Stephen Colbert for the Tonight Show book club,
Oh,
which was like,
fun.
wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool because it's kind of pretty literary, pretty niche in a certain way, but also just so appealing.
Okay.
Yeah,
So that was This Is Not About Us by Allegra
yeah,
Goodman. And what's the
yeah.
last one you brought today?
The last one is by a beloved American writer who I hope we all know about, and if we don't, we should. Her name is Jane Ann Phillips.
Okay.
Her last book was a historical novel that won the Pulitzer Prize called Night Watch. So you
Okay.
may have heard of her through
Yeah, I've
that.
heard it. Yep.
Yep. But her very first book came out in 1979, and it was called Black Tickets. And it was this radical, wonderful departure in the book world because it told the real story of young women, women in their 20s, women in
Okay.
relation to their mothers and their families. That book was seminal, had a huge influence on me and a whole bunch of other writers. And it's all sort of like the Bible of the 80s and 90s,
Okay.
and people just refer to it all the time. This ends up going back in a way to the world of those young women because this Small Town Girls is a memoir. And it's about her, Jane Ann's experience growing up in West Virginia and the history of that place. And this is in the 50s. She's a bit older than me. And she describes it so exquisitely, such detail and just beautifully chosen things that she ends up sort of portraying America at an earlier
Yeah.
time. And also, again, the lives of girls and women.
Okay.
And I recommend her, and I recommend this most recent one.
Yeah. Oh, I'll have to pick that one up. It sounds really
Yeah.
intriguing. So that was Small Town Girls by Jane Ann Phillips. Thank you so much for
Yes.
bringing those books with you today. How
Yeah.
I love to end our show is with a speed round of questions you can answer really quick. Are you a
Okay.
rereader?
Not often because I have so many books in my TBR pile,
Yeah.
but every once in a while I'll go back to something like Black Tickets or like Chekhov short stories, favorite novels, not so much because there's such a big time commitment, but short stories I'll go back and reread
Okay.
sometimes.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, you can fit
Yeah.
those in a bit easier with the
Yeah.
TBR pile.
And I'm always so eager to read whatever's next. So it's
Yeah.
hard to go back. Yeah.
Yeah, there's that excitement, right? That anticipation of like, oh, I get to start a new book today. Like,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
fun.
It is thrilling.
Yes. What is one book you've read that has changed your life?
You kindly gave me that question in advance, which was lovely to know. And it's really hard to think of because so
Okay.
many move me so quickly. Honestly, I'm going to go back to about sixth grade and a book called Lad, a Dog, which is
Okay.
written by a British author. And I still have a copy of it on my shelf.
I
And what I
love that.
remember most about it was that I cried at the end when Lad dies. And it's sort of it's that book transported me and gave me a sense of what is possible in a book, that you can take a reader along with you in such a deep way that they feel a loss as deeply as if it was a real person, or in this case, a real animal, a real pet.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's the book that came to mind.
Yeah. It's so interesting you
Yeah.
say that because I feel like I have this aversion to the movie Homeward Bound because
Oh,
as
yeah.
a child, I think I was like sobbing. We watched it in school and I remember sobbing at the end of that movie,
Yes.
like physically shaking. And I never had such like a visceral reaction of grief.
Yes,
And
yes,
now
and you
to
can
this
really
day, I'm
feel it.
very hesitant to reading or watching animal related movies because I think it's going to
I
destroy
understand.
me.
I
So,
understand. I remember, like, around that same time that I'm describing, a lot of the girls I knew were reading, Black Beauty,
yeah.
right? And that's about horses, and I didn't have an affinity for horses, and I
Yeah.
was like, I don't really get it." And then I read this one about a dog, and of course we had a dog, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, my heart is broken now," and it really
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
It
It's like
really
a
was.
pivotal moment of your childhood because there are so many books like that in those younger genres, right? Where
Yes.
something tragic
It
happens to the
speaks to
animal and
us.
it just, yeah,
I know,
grips you.
and it makes it so we understand what's possible from a book. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, lastly, because you've already answered your favorite
Yes.
place to read, but lastly,
Yes.
what are you reading next?
Well, I have to finish Small Town Girls,
Okay.
that's for sure. I have Good Dirt by Charmaine
Oh,
Wilkerson.
yes.
I Felt My Life with Both My Hands, a collection of short stories by the consummate story writer Jessica Treadway. And I'm halfway through Tayari Jones's Kin.
Okay.
So you see what I mean? It's
Yep.
like I've got, I just, I don't know. I'm just so lucky that I get to read and write. And, I'm just in pig heaven. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show
Thank
today and
you.
sharing your love of books and reading with us. I really appreciate your time.
I really appreciate it too. Thank you so much for
You're
your time.
welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Virginia Pye, including her book flight of recent reads that she has loved. You can find all the books that we talked about today at bookishflights.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.